Recording
also
in
the
progress.
chairperson of the Fundraising and Investment Committee. Professor Michael Katz, he is part of the Audit and Risk Committee, but he's also the chairman of or chairperson of ENS Africa, who are pro bono service providers for legal, governance, and tax services to the fund. Trifosa Ramano is a chartered accountant. She is the chairman of the Audit and Risk Committee. Faith Kanyile is the CEO of WDB, and she chairs the Disbursement Monitoring and Evaluation Committee. Dr. Namane Mahau and Mary Papaya are co-chairs of the ABC Committee, which stands for Advocacy, Behavioral Change, and Communications Committee. Dr. Shahida Omar is the CEO of Teddy Bear Clinic. Bafana Kumalo is with the Sonke Justice. Dr. Leslie Ann Foster Masimanyane, she is the MD of Masimanyane. And we have Ella Mangisa, Lutando Vuba, Uviwe Nsaluba, and Rose Kinley. Each member of the board sits on one or two subcommittees of the board, and our CEO, who started on the 1st of June, is Dr Dlamini. So I'd just like to walk through the important milestones over the 6-month period. The next slide, please. It's always difficult to talk about gender-based violence and femicide in our country without taking us just a few years back to the total shutdown movement, which was then followed by the presidential summit, which gave rise to the interim steering committee, the drafting of the National Strategic Plan for Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, which was launched last year on the 1st of May. And on the 4th of Feb, IWFSA led the private sector with the president launching the response fund as we know it today. The next slide, please. And it's the first thing that we did, because we realized the importance of civil society and the importance of collaboration in the space we find ourselves in, was to consult with civil society. And that meeting on the 15th of February was hosted by the presidency and chaired by Professor Olive Shisana. And the theory of change was influenced by the output of that meeting. The fund was registered by ENS for Section 18 tax, and also just as a non-profit company. We've worked very hard to ensure that the governance structure is in place and establishing a board that is representative. And we actually made sure that the way the board members were appointed was transparent. And on the 1st of June, we appointed the CEO. Prior to that, we are assisted by APSA in terms of project management and company secretariat. And one of the important milestones that we've had is the release of the call for proposals, which was done on the 12th of July, assisted by the implementing partner, Chikululu, which is known in the space. And we gave people 3 weeks. And on the 6th of August, the call for proposals was closed. The next slide, please. So we are guided by the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, the 6 pillars. And our vision is a South Africa that is free from gender-based violence directed at women, children, and LGBTQIA+ persons. The next slide, please. So our impact statement again is a South Africa free from gender-based violence as indicated, and taking into consideration the engagement that we have with civil society on the 15th of February and the theory of change, which was quite a deep engagement by the board and the implementing partner, Chikululu. We are quite aware of our limitation in terms of resources. I'll talk to the funds raised so far later, but we have that limitation. So it's important for us that we find the areas of highest impact to make sure that the impact is seen, and therefore it helps us to raise more funds. So we've identified the 2 pillars, not because the other pillars are not important, but because of what I've just said. But we do believe that everything we do does talk to all the pillars, especially pillar 1 on accountability, coordination and leadership. And I'll talk to that later in terms of the partnerships that we've been able to solicit. In terms of pillar 5, one of our midwives, the IWFSA, is working closely with the JSE to fast track that side, which is economic empowerment of women. And in terms of pillar 6, I'll talk to that when I talk about the dashboard and other initiatives. So based on that, we chose pillar 2 and 3, focusing on prevention and building social cohesion and justice, safety, and protection in pillar 3. The next slide, please. We can go to the next one. So I'd like to share with you the funding status of the fund currently. The next slide, please. So we've received a total of 146, just under 147 million rand in terms of pledges. This is slightly higher than the pledges that were received when President Ramaphosa launched the fund, which was 128 million rand. There are 2 types of donations that we receive. It's the direct cash donation and the indirect program funding. In terms of the pledges on direct cash, we are sitting at just less than 110 million rand, but what has been received in the bank account is around 87 million rand. So we are still, actually 82, sorry, we are still following up on the outstanding amount, but a lot has been covered. It's taken quite a bit to reach the number that we have now. And then there is indirect pledges that amount to about 37.15 million rand. And what do I mean by that? Taking, for example, a company, an institution like Ford Foundation, they have pledged cash, but they've also ring-fenced gender-based violence initiatives within their portfolio, where we are busy with a collaborative agreement. First Rand has done the same. First Rand hasn't put in any cash, but they've actually ring-fenced a collaborative gender-based violence initiative. I think it amounts to about 12 million rand. African Fashion International gave 100,000 rand direct cash, and but also gave 150,000 rand in kind. So we have a few of those. The next slide, please. Those are just some of the companies that have pledged either in kind or in cash. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation has pledged 6 million rand, which is going to cover the working op cost within the fund. The next slide, please. We have quite a few pro bono partners, and it pleases me to see that we also have individuals in the person of Veliswa Nochikila, a young woman who actually said, I'm going to offer my accounting services pro bono for 3 months. Lynn Stevens, she's now our CFO. Lynn Stevens also pledged her pro bono services. She's a brand marketing and communications executive, and also a small company like the Media and Writers Firm, which is led by Richie Mkondo. Those are some of the companies that are offering pro bono services. ABSA, in terms of banking, initially for the first 4 months, it was project management and secretarial services. And ENS, I've already alluded to the services they're offering us. Alexander Forbes, Fund Administration and Investment. Deloitte are our external auditors doing it pro bono. PwC assist with back office support, governance assurance, payroll, and the accounting services. Recently, just in August, McKinsey seconded an executive in the person of Gary to assist the CEO. Can you hear me? Can I have this next slide, please? So I spoke earlier about the request for proposals that was issued on the 12th of July. The governance oversight of this was the disbursement committee, and the theory of change model, which underpins what we aim to achieve, was threshed out by the board, assisted by Chikululu, the implementing partner. We've received a substantial interest from community-based organization. The process of analyzing the grant applications is underway. We have a comprehensive project plan to award, disperse, and evaluate the impact. Next slide, please. So just to give you a feel of the applications that were received, we received more than 400 applications, and the media release was translated into our official languages for national reach. It was important for us that no one is left behind because they have a challenge of language. It was published and broadcast across multiple media platforms. We are lucky that our CEO can speak 7 African languages. So she was able to go to local community stations to explain what the RFP is about, who can apply, and so forth. And we also use the social media platforms to reach as many people as possible. And we do have numbers of how many people were accessed using the different social media platforms. And there was substantial PR and advertising value achieved for the RFP publication and supporting media. The next slide, please. So this has been the process starting from the 1st of June with the workshop on theory of change to actually the published RFP, which was open for 4 weeks. Sorry, I said 3, it was 4. And it is our intention that in the first week of October, we will start disbursements, and then the period of monitoring and reporting will kick in, including site visits to those people that have been allocated funds. Next slide, please. So as indicated earlier on, one of the strengths that we want to bring to the party, because we bring not only the private sector, we bring the private sector and all other sectors of the economy, including tertiary institutions, both financial and non-financial contribution. It is our intention that we lay a foundation of networks of people that can actually help in fighting the scourge. So the more people we get interested and involved in fighting the scourge in all possible ways is what we want to achieve during the period of our existence. So we do this through innovative partnerships. If you can go to the next slide, please. So one of the partnerships that we have is the Forensic Science Advisory Committee, which is a subcommittee of the board. I did indicate that our theory of change was influenced by the submissions made at the meeting we had with civil society. One of the things that came out at that meeting, which is obviously known to the country because it's a national crisis, is the DNA backlog. So immediately after that meeting, we started engaging with South African police services at the highest level, assisted by the presidency. Those talks are ongoing, and our role is making sure that we get a partner that can assist the forensic science laboratory in taking some of the load off the SAPS. It's a very important relationship for us, and with a partnership of mutual respect. So we don't talk about the relationship without the other party in the room. So if you can just respect that, that's all I'm going to say, that the talks are actually happening. SAPS is very keen on the solution that we are discussing with them, and we are optimistic that we will conclude something. The next slide, please. The other issue that we believe is important is, which is under Pillar 6, because that is research, is a dashboard, an integrated dashboard that actually shows us a comprehensive visualization and monitoring tool of available data related to gender-based violence and femicide. So because it's important for us to collaborate, one, two, there are a lot of pieces of information that reside in different areas. Sometimes it doesn't talk to each other. It's important for us that we engage as widely as possible. So in this initiative, we are assisted by Professor Bruce Melado and Professor Berit Dolatsky, who are involved with the COVID dashboard for Gauteng. But we know that that is their skill, but they are not experts when it comes to gender-based violence and femicide. So we hosted a workshop on the 10th of August, where we invited people that are in the space of gender-based violence and femicide, civil society, some of the Pillar 6 collaborators, the NRF and CSIR, to actually talk about big data, mobilizing AI against gender-based violence, and also to solicit what is there already, so that when we come up with the dashboard, it's actually comprehensive. Next slide, please. Thanks very much. I know I've actually gone quite quickly, and I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. If I don't have answers, I will promise to have our CEO supply the answers if I don't know them. But I'm happy to try and answer questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Dlamini, for your presentation. I would love to give this opportunity to honorable members to ask questions. Is there any hand for clarity seeking questions? Okay. Yeah, Honorable van der Merwe.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you very much to Dr. Dlamini for the presentation. Mine will only be a clarity-seeking question. Firstly, I think well done on the work done so far in terms of the pro bono work, or the companies that have been brought on board in terms of donations and doing pro bono work. But Dr. Dlamini said when she got to the slide about when she spoke about the 400 applications that have been received, she said that she would give us a snapshot of the type of applications that have been received, but I didn't get that information. I wanted to get more of an indication of what type of community organizations or what type of organizations have applied for funding. And my concern here would be, how are we going to ensure that we don't duplicate, for example, services that are already provided by other NGOs, for example, duplication of services that DSD already funds, the Department of Social Development already funds. For example, where I would like funds to go to, for example, if I was distributing these funds, would be to shelters that are struggling. One would recall, Chairperson, that when we went to the Children's Amendment Bill hearings, we heard from people who run shelters who are critically underfunded. They get women and children presenting themselves to their institutions, but they don't have enough money to feed them or clothe them or support them. So, for example, are shelters part of these organizations that have come forward with proposals? Another area where I would like to see, for example, funds being distributed is, for example, towards social workers in communities and assisting women, for example, with legal services, or even just training on their basic rights when they are confronted with gender-based violence, or even just drafting of affidavits. So I would just like to get more clarity with regards to these 400 applications and whether they would cover any of these areas, and also the issue of duplication of services. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable van der Merwe. Honorable Nkomo.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and greetings to members in the meeting. Dr. Dlamini, just firstly want to applaud and just give credit to the board by saying that when I've seen the structure of the board, I was very excited, to see that it's predominantly by women. And it also proves that, of course, the struggle of women is moving forward, and women are continuing to find space in higher structures. And also to applaud the issue of the DNA blockage challenge. Your engagement with the Department of Police, are hoping that it will then bring a solution to this challenge, because most cases they end up not being concluded, or they take long to be concluded based on the issue of the backlog on the DNA. So that also it's a good milestone that I can say we've achieved as a board. But just to also check, does the board only work with the private or rather community institutions? So my clarity is that in terms of the government institutions, do we have engagements in them so that we strengthen where they are lacking? Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Whip. Dr. Dlamini, I just believe that you were busy noting the questions.
Yes, Madam Chairperson, I was. Thank you.
I would love also to check your relationship with the CEO.
We actually share. Thanks for asking that question. Dlamini, we have them in all Nguni tribes, and she is not related to me. I am Uma Dlamini, she's Mrs. Dlamini, and she is married to a Dlamini that I don't know. So we're not related.
No, thank you very much. I know that you are going to get that type of a question when
we get it all the time, Madam Chairperson. Honorable van der Merwe.
There is one thing also that I wanted to check with you. Since you said you did invite for proposals, how are you going to make sure that at the end of the day you covered all the 9 provinces as far as funding is concerned? Or you just take as they come to say, let's say, for instance, if it happens that your proposals are coming from 2 or 3 provinces, are you going to consider that and you leave the rest out? Or is there a way that you're going to do in order to make sure that at the end of the day, all provinces are covered, since the challenges that we're talking about, it covers the whole country? Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Madam Chairperson. Let me start by addressing Honorable van der Merwe's question. In terms of the type of organizations that have applied, we have Chikululu that is going through together with the executive. As the board, we haven't been privy to who has applied as yet, but we'll have access to that information once they come with recommendations, which will be done by the disbursement committee, but we will have access to whatever information we need. So that is the first point. So I'm not in a position to answer your question, Honorable van der Merwe. In terms of, but I like your focus on the areas that you believe have to be addressed. But once we are in a position to give that information, we will be happy to give that information. To answer Honorable Whip, in terms of the private, let me just get the question again. You said, do we only work with private and community? Oh, yes. Or do we also work with government? I'll tell you what has happened so far. We've had a few meetings with Tutuzela Care Center leader, Advocate Bonnie. We've been to a few of them, but because of the limitation of funds, we are aware of what they are doing. The 5 that they are in the process of launching, and the areas where they need support. As I alluded to earlier on, one of the ways, creative ways where we try and intervene where we don't have funds to use for the intervention is to try and bring a private sector or other sectors, even public sector, to say, this is the challenge, how can you assist? So where it's at currently is that she's just looking at the priorities and what exactly they need, because when you go and bring a partner, you want to be clear as to what you are asking for and what that is going to serve, because people want to see the impact that their contribution is going to make. A week, 2 or 3 weeks ago, we went to some of the police stations where there are billboards with messaging that were being unveiled by Minister Patricia de Lille. They also have the need to, actually, as you know, they've released quite a few buildings to be reconfigured for national shelters, but the need is higher than what they have released. We haven't engaged further than that brief meeting that we had, but we are here to say, if there is a way we can bring other parties to assist to fill the gap, we would like to explore that. It's important that when you go to a potential partner, you know exactly what you need from them and what impact it's going to have. So it's quite open, Madam Whip. And in terms of the question from, I thought I had written your question, Madam Chairperson. Sorry, can you repeat your question, please? Is the Chairperson still with us?
Yes. No, I was checking the issue of proposals. That are you going to consider all the provinces?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Because sometimes you may find that maybe proposals are coming from 2 or 3 provinces. So if that will be the case, are you going to leave those other provinces out? Or is there a way that you're going to do in order to invite from all the provinces, in order to make sure that all the provinces are benefiting at the end of the day, because the challenges that we are facing is cut across the country?
That's very true, Madam Chairperson. That is why we went out of the way to make sure that the call for proposal is translated to all languages, to make sure that we cover all provinces. And the CEO went on a roadshow with the committee radio stations on TV to make sure that we get information through. In terms of how we will handle the proposals, it's difficult for me to know which, actually it's not possible because I haven't seen the proposals, to know which provinces, but it's quite important for us that we are as inclusive as possible. And we are mindful of the fact that as also confirmed by the civil society engagement that we have, that we tend to focus on urban NGOs and CBOs and neglect rural and settlement areas. So we are quite cognizant of that. And there is an element of prioritizing certain provinces at the expense of others. So we are aware of all that. We have the advantage of using an implementing partner that actually has worked in the space, and there is research that was done last year when the Solidarity Fund went into the GBVF space. So that is also informing us in terms of the highest need. I hope I've answered you.
No, thank you very much. Honorable members, do we still have some bite? Or I have to release her? Honorable van der Merwe?
It looks like
Sorry, Chairperson. No, I'm here. Sorry, Chairperson. I was just, I'm on apologies. No, I think we are fine for now. I think my questions,
Okay.
of course, I understand why they couldn't be answered because, of course, the board is not privy to the applications received. But I think it would be important that we do receive another presentation at a later stage so that we can look at the disbursement of funds related to your questions and whether it covers all the areas that we would like to be covered, where there are gaps. But other than that, I think we are covered for now.
We are
Thank you,
covered
Chair.
for now. Oh, thank you very much. Whip, is there something that you want to add? For now? Honorable Nkomo? Okay. I don't know, maybe she's got a problem where she is. Honorable members, I think I have to release her since I got this information before we start from the secretary that she would love to be released earlier because she's still going to attend another meeting. Thank you very much, says Judy. Hope to see you tomorrow.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks very much, Madam Chairperson, Madam Whip, and the honorable members. It was an honor to address you. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
Proceeding with our meeting. The role of multi-party women caucus in the implementation of the Women's Charter by our researcher, Jean Watson.
Yes, Chair. Good evening, Chair.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm very well. Good evening to all the honorable members.
Happy to hear that you are very well.
Okay, so this one is not going to take us long. I think that, you know, the idea here was just to touch base with the now third version of the Women's Charter. We had in the past had the first version in 1954 and then another version in 1994. And now we have, as a result of Parliament's consultations with civil society and women's organizations and other stakeholders, we have the Women's Charter for Accelerated Development 2021. And Chair, you will see that some of these areas of work are already incorporated into our program. So I think that the idea here was just to look at what came out of that charter and to see whether there's anything else that we want to add to our program in light of this piece of work. So the Accelerated Charter is based on 15 strategic objectives One is broadly around realizing gender equality. Two is looking at what happens within government in terms of their planning and the mainstreaming of gender. The third is around gender and the economy, looking at poverty, particularly in the context of COVID. Strategic Objective 4 looks at equality in development, especially when it comes in the enforcement of the law for women. Strategic Objective 5 is about producing quality education for women and girls. 6 looks at infrastructure, our public infrastructure and the environment. 7 is around looking at access to sustainable social protection systems, so things like grants and so on. Strategic Objective 8 is about deconstructing patriarchy and inequality in political and civic life. And then 9 follows on by that by taking it further down into the family and into the relationships. 10 looks at sort of social systems in culture, custom, and religion. Strategic Objective number 11 is very important. It's the one around creating access to land. And then Strategic Objective number 12, which we have on our program, is about looking at gender-based violence and femicide. 13 deals with the issue of housing and access to women housing, especially for, in fact, the charter makes mention of victims of gender-based violence, as well as the poor. 14 looks at healthcare and women's access to healthcare, and particularly around the NHI. And then last, there's an objective looking at transformation and gender equality in the media, building on from the previous women's charters. So you will see what I've done is taken from the charter very nicely. It's laid out very nicely. It takes all the inputs and puts them around these 15 strategic objectives. It tells us what the problem is and what are the actions that are going to be done. So I'm not going to go through that because you know, it's pretty, it is all there in the charter. But we have clear statements of problems and clear areas of activity. I'm just going to go through 1 or 2 as an example. So if we look at the first strategic objective, which is about realizing gender equality, this is sort of the overarching strategic objective. So the problem there is that we often don't have enough resources to do this. We've not seen gender mainstreaming happen in the state. Our gender machinery has been dysfunctional. And the fact that while we have this gender responsive and budgeting framework, it's not really being implemented. And so there's, because that gender responsive budgeting framework is not being implemented, it has negatively affected how we are able to monitor expenditure from a gender perspective. So the example of how the Women's Charter dealt with this was to say we then need to re-engineer government's planning machinery by, again, making sure that gender mainstreaming is happening in all planning processes across national, provincial, and local government, that we, again, have to prioritize effective budget and fiscal measures, institutionalizing gender-sensitive intergovernmental fiscal relation systems, and that we will make it obligatory that related stakeholders have to be trained in skills development and capacity building on gender responsive planning and budgeting. So for each of the 15 strategic objectives, there are problem statements, there are action areas. But what I wanted to do, if Mandy will just go to page, because in the interest of time, I don't want to go through all of them. I want to go to the page 7, which really looks at how possibly can the Multi-Party Women's Caucus take some of this work forward. So, you know, firstly, it's important to mention that there is work that we are already doing that aligns with the Women's Charter for Accelerated Development, our work around gender responsive budgeting, our work around gender-based violence. In fact, you know, looking at the fund tonight is part of that. So what we might want to do is to look at what do we already have on the program, where does it align, and do we want to adapt any of the strategies that we're looking at so that we further align. Then, of course, it's important that all members, as part of the Women's Caucus, actually in the other committees that they sit on, they familiarize themselves with the strategic objectives and that they are making sure that it's mainstreamed into all committee work. We are also able to then look at these strategic objectives and say, is there anything that we want to amplify and pull out to make sure that we want to include on our program, and develop a plan of action around that aligns with the priority action identified in the charter. So that is something that the caucus needs to look at. Is there anything new that we want to do that we take from this document? And then the issue of conferral in the past, and this Women's Caucus has done it also with if you recall, honorable members, with the GBV bills, when we met and we looked at those bills and we wrote to other committees to say, this is the view of the Women's Caucus. So we can also write to relevant committees to say, this is what has come out from the Women's Charter. These are the key priority action areas. And we're asking in your own oversight that you have a look at that. So what I did is, because it's a political decision to decide, for the caucus to decide on which strategic objectives it will focus, what I did was to pull out an example of something that could be done, but obviously it's a political decision and this is just an example. So for example, if we took strategic priority number 1, which is to accelerate the realization of gender equality, and within this, the discussion was the gender responsive budgeting was critical, that it's not happening in the government departments, and that there's like the progress here has been really slow. Every time there's a deadline, the deadlines are missed. And this is already in our scope of work, where we are planning to engage with the Department of Women to look at its plans to accelerate the rollout of the gender responsive budgeting framework. Also within strategic priority number 1 is to strengthen the national gender machinery. That came out very strongly. So for example, the Women's Caucus could decide to engage in a process of looking at what progress has been made here. We had our own process as Parliament under the leadership of the Deputy Chair of the NCOP. We can go back to that and see where are we now, and host a meeting where we invite the related stakeholders. I think one of the key problems was that the national gender machinery was not meeting in the way that they used to meet in the past, and we could have a look at what's been happening there in terms of progress. For another example is strategic priority number 3, which looks at advancing gender sensitive workers' rights, looking at the impact of poverty in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic, how women have been affected, looking at women in the informal economy, the undervaluing of care work in society, and women in marginalized sectors of the economy like domestic workers and farm workers, and women in the informal sector. So this, is one area where we could, for example, write to the related committees asking about what are the plans to engage in oversight on these areas. Strategic priority number 12, which is in our program, around ending all forms of violence against women and femicide. Part of the discussions here was that we have legislation, but it's not being implemented. We can again look at how do we further align, because now we have 2 sites of work here. We have the Women's Charter, but we also have our NSP. So how do we bring those 2 together in looking at which aspects of gender-based violence we're going to incorporate in our program? So Chair, I'm going to stop here. Under your guidance, I think it is a political decision around which of the 15 strategic objectives are the ones that the Multi-Party Women's Caucus would like to take up, and how it would like to take it up. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members, for your time.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Honorable members, can we engage the presentation?
Chairperson.
Yes, Honorable Van der Merwe.
Okay, firstly, I want to thank the research team for the document. I think it's a lot of good work has gone into it. I really did like the proposals, for example, that members of the Multi-Party Women's Caucus should identify key areas that we can also drive in our portfolio committee, various portfolio committees. I think that is a sensible solution. One of the key issues that I think I want us to address, for example, it's an issue that has been long outstanding, but it is around, well, the issue of the gender responsive budgeting. I think it's very important and a key area that we should prioritize is the Multi-Party Women's Caucus. I don't think we are moving forward in terms of this area. I think there's been snail's pace progress or even regression. But another issue is I like this idea of engaging with or writing and oversighting the various portfolio committees. For example, I think for me, and one of the issues that I really would like to get more information or oversight is the issue of the gender pay gap. We talk about it a lot in Parliament. We raise it as an area of concern. We raise it as one of the reasons why women stay in, for example, abusive relationships or cannot move, from a family situation that is dangerous or toxic. So I think one of the issues that we need to oversight more is around the issues of labor, the gender pay gap, the marginalized sectors of the economy, our farm workers, our domestic workers. I think we need to look into that. And I think also we need to renew and sharp our focus on the issue of the sanitary dignity program as well. I don't feel that there's enough progress in this area. So just to say that I think those are some of the areas of concern that I would like us to tackle, hopefully before the end of the year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Van der Merwe. Is there something that you want to raise? Honorable Nkomo.
Can you hear me now, Chairperson?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Oh, I think there's a problem with my gadget. No, I was saying for now I'm fine. I fully second what Honorable Giselle said. I fully agree with her. That at least by the end of the year we should have achieved certain things, especially the gender responsive budgeting and the functioning of the gender machinery. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, honorable members. I also fully agree with the two of you, but there's something that I feel it's problematic because as multi-party, the only way in making the department accountable is through the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. Except that you will agree on saying that as members from attending other committees, we have to make sure that it is there in their programs. But it's like, it's not working. Like we've got really, as multi-party, we do have a mandate or a role to play in making sure that it's implemented with all the departments. I don't know if one day, even if it's not during the 6th Parliament, maybe Parliament may change some of the roles that multi-party is doing for now in order to make sure that they do account direct. Maybe that's where we can see even the implementation of some of these issues that we are complaining about, or the slow pace which is there. But with the Department of Women, really, to me, it's like they've got a huge burden to deal with. That is why we see some of these things as moving very slow, but it's just my suggestion for now. And thank you very much, John, for your presentation, and honorable members. Is there anything before we go to the next item?
Yes, Chair, may
Yes,
I
Chair.
just address you
Yes.
quickly on this issue that you've just
Yeah.
raised? Chairperson, I've been thinking about this for quite a long time, because I think you are quite right that the Department of Women and the Presidency has got a lot of work. It's also a small department with a limited resources. It's not an implementing department per se, but it's more a coordinating department. And so what worries me is Parliament created the structure of the Women's Caucus and thereby appointed you a chairperson of this entity at the level of all chairpersons. So you are a chairperson like any chairperson of any other portfolio committee. Yet our body hasn't got any teeth. And so then the problem becomes, what is it exactly that Parliament seeks from us in terms of how they want us to perform our roles and responsibilities? And I was wondering whether at one stage maybe we should consider as the steering committee to support you in seeking an audience, maybe with the chair of chairs, Honourable Frolic, to discuss this very issue of the mandate and the legacy that we want to leave as a women's caucus. Because otherwise I fear that, you know, it's no good meeting for the sake of meeting or talking for the sake of talking if we don't see real progress, real action, and real accountability. And we can't be working through, like you said, a department that's already overstretched. And that's why you're seeing the challenges that you're seeing. So I'm wondering whether we shouldn't seek, as a steering committee in support of you and your work, whether we shouldn't seek an audience with the chair of chair to just define some of these issues and get a clear mandate and understanding, and maybe even a go-ahead to be able to perform as a separate oversight entity, because I do think that is what Parliament envisaged by setting up the structure. So I just wanted to say maybe that's a solution to our problems.
True. Can I come in, Chair?
Yeah, yes, Whip.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I fully agree, and the sentiments that you are sharing now, I think it's the same sentiments that the broader women who are members of the broader multi-party women's caucus feel. Because I remember in one of the meetings, it was raised that to say what exactly it is our role as the multi-party women's caucus vis-a-vis the role of the portfolio committee of women and children. So I was gonna maybe propose that part of this presentation that we just received, which only speaks about the implementation of the Women's Charter, let's also get an introduction, should also maybe highlight, you know, the role and the responsibilities of the multi-party women's caucus, so that discussion, it also becomes part of the discussion tomorrow. Then it becomes a mandate of the collective to say what is the way forward, of which Honourable Lizelle also already proposed what must be the way forward. It is a frustrating issue to all other women of the steering committee, because we have boundaries. We don't know where our boundaries are, which lines are the crop, how far can we, you know, go in terms of accountability and so forth. So I think it is important that because the steering committee, the multi-party women's caucus requested a workshop. They said, but let's be workshop and understand exactly what is our role. But 2 years down the line, you know, we are still not clear exactly what exactly it is expected from us, given the fact that we are not a portfolio committee with certain powers that would be given to portfolio committees, which takes departments to account. So I felt I must also agree strongly with yourself and what Honourable Van der Merwe just said. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Whip and Honourable Van der Merwe. I think we must take this one as one of our recommendations from the steering committee to the multi-party.
Agreed, Chairperson, agreed.
Thank you very much. What is the next item? Consideration and the adoption of minutes. And I think we're going to have a challenge with the one of the 4th of June, like previous, because Honorable Van der Merwe, you were not there on the 4th, isn't it? Mandy, can you assist?
Yeah, I don't think I was in on that one, but Mandy can just advise us, please.
Mandy? Mandy, are you there? Nuran, can you talk to Mandy? Mandy?
Chair, I'm going to try to get hold of her now.
Please, because I want to check if Honorable Van der Merwe was present on
Okay,
the
okay.
meeting of the 4th of June,
Okay, Chair.
so that we'll be able to proceed with our meeting.
I'm not muted, but
Mandy,
no one can hear me.
Are you connected?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, okay, bye.
your line is too bad.
Chair, if I could just assist, I've got the minutes here for
Okay,
the 4th of June. It says members in attendance was Miss Pilankulu, Zetinkomo, Miss Teke, Miss Pilani Majake, and Miss Sinenya. So Honorable Van der Merwe was not part of the meeting.
was not part. So I don't know whether we can pack the 2 sets of minutes or we'll deal with the one of the 25th. Or we can pack them and we're going to adopt them another day, I don't know.
Chair,
Yes, Honorable Member?
I think because they're only two, Chairperson, can we leave them for the next meeting?
Yeah. No, that will be fine. Whip, what do you think?
No, I agree, Chair. We can pick them for the next meeting.
Okay, honorable members, and thank you very much, Ash. And I believe we're all tired. We're from the portfolio committees, then the House, then this meeting again. But thank you very much for availing yourself. Hope to see you tomorrow in our broader meeting and the meeting agenda.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you,
very
Whip.
much.
See you
Thank you, Chair.
tomorrow.
See you
Good
tomorrow.
night.
Thank you, Honorable Van der Merwe.
Bye.
Thank you, Honorable Nkomo. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye.
Bye.